Here's Brody Brazil.
I feel like it's a little bit cliche to say that the A's were drastically impacted by the year 2020 because, let's be honest, we all were in some specific fashion. A lot of things were around the world, but when you look back at turning points and tipping points, the A's both on and off the field pretty much got derailed in that calendar year for a couple of different reasons, which I will explain here. First off, the baseball side of things. There really was a buildup to 2020 as a potential for a great season. 2014, their prior time of making the playoffs before 18 and 19. 2014, they won 88 games. You remember they had the best record in baseball halfway through, and then they made the Cespedes for Lester trade, and they barely even got into the playoffs, and then lost the wild card game to the Royals. And then after that, fire sale. Team turns over. 2015, they win 68 games. 2016, not much better. 2017, halfway through that season, they call up two guys named Matt Chapman and Matt Olson. And all of a sudden, in the second half of that year, they play basically 500 baseball. Now you're starting to see the uptick. Now there's something here. Now there's a group of players that can win baseball games. 2018, and with the help of Chris Davis and company, they win 97 games, but do not win the American League West because, oh yeah, the Astros are still doing their thing. Same thing in 2019. They get to a playoff game, a one-game wild card opportunity. 2018, they lost it to the Yankees. 2019, at the Coliseum, they lose it to Tampa. But still a 97-win season, and you can just see this trajectory. You can also understand that the A's and the way they do things with player control over contracts and how many years they're in the big leagues, they would still have that same group from 18 and 19 intact for 2020. So everybody was looking for another opportunity for this team to maybe get just a little bit better, get over that hump, win the division, have another ticket to the dance, and hopefully actually make a run that counted in 2020. Not to mention, this team might correlate with the new ballpark in a couple years, but we'll talk about the off-field stuff in just a second. Important to remember that going into 2020, there was so much optimism, and for good reason. I mean, look at your everyday lineup in the infield, left to right: Chapman, Marcus, Tony Kemp, Matt Olson. You've got gold and platinum gloves at the corners. You've got cornerstone players like those two, like those three with Marcus, and Sean Murphy doing the catching. Remember, by 2020, we had just barely seen a little bit of Sean Murphy, just scratched the surface of his potential, like as we know it could be now. And it is with Atlanta right now. Robbie Grossman in left, Laser in center, Steven Piscotty in right, then off the bench, Canna, LaStella, Pinder, Jonah Heim, who's now an all-star with the Rangers, and Seth Brown, who with Tony Kemp, and Ramon Laureano, a couple of the only players actually remaining from this 2020 lineup. So you can see how all of this put together had a lot of A's fans pretty excited about the potential for 2020. Spring training happened. Everything, as you know, came to a screeching halt. The season did not even get underway. For a couple months between March and April and May and June, we had no clue if there even would be a baseball season in 2020. And what a crime, right? Because the A's were so poised and projected to do so well with this group that maybe it was only going to exist for another year or two. Eventually, they get things going with spring training part 2. That was Camp Coliseum. All the big league teams had their second spring training at their home stadium sites. Then they played 60 games in 66 days. There was a lot of isolation, a lot of loneliness. This was a season like no other that any player had ever been through. In fact, the A's played 5 doubleheaders in their final month of that season because they had to make up so many games after Smoke canceled some and after a couple positive tests delayed a road trip in Houston. All that, though, even with all that, and losing Matt Chapman along the way due to a hip injury, the team still wins 36 games out of 60, which is the exact equivalent, I kid you not, when you extrapolate, it's a 97-win pace for a third straight season. So they get to that same winning percentage just in a different way. And actually, in this 2020 year, they win the AL West. Like I was saying before, finally getting over that hump of Houston, albeit in an expedited season. I know it didn't feel the same, and it just didn't play out the same for a lot of different reasons and obvious reasons. So they win the West, And because of the rule changes of 2020, they don't get to go straight to the ALDS. No. They've got to now play a wild card series. That's right. They were a wild card team 2 years before that. Now they've got to play a series, which usually is reserved for teams that don't win the division, but they have to. They lose the first game to Chicago. They win the next two at the Coliseum. So they advance and play the Astros at the neutral site of Dodger Stadium, where it was hot and baseballs were carrying. And it was basically like home run derby, and the Astros hit more home runs in that series. They win it 3-1, and it just all kind of felt like, what just happened? That was a wreck. That season was a throwaway. And then after 2020, Marcus leaves the team as a free agent. They made him reportedly the offer of kind of like a layaway contract. Like, we can't pay you all of this up front or during your years. We'll pay you over 5 or 10 years, even after you're done playing for this team or your contract ends here. Very bizarre. They did not offer Liam Hendriks a contract opportunity. So your shortstop and your closer, gone. Obviously some red flags. But even in 2021, the first half, the A's do quite well. A 52-40 record. And even at the trade deadline, going into August, it was David Forst's one of his best deadlines as a GM, acquiring Starling Marte, Josh Harrison, Yan Gomes, and Andrew Chafin. That foursome right there of everyday, regular, contributing players, it was quite a boost, a shot in the arm to this team, but still, they had so many things going wrong, including losing Chris Bassett after getting hit with a comebacker in August for most of the rest of that season. He did come back. But the A's go 34-36 in the second half of 2021, and that's it. And it literally is the end of an era. Bob Melvin, right after the season is over, he departs. And I say he departs, but he was under contract one more year. The A's basically said, we're not going to renew your contract. We will let you explore other opportunities. He did. He leaves for San Diego. And then the lockout kicked in after the end of the 21 season, so no team could make any trades over the winter, but the day they could, the first couple days they could, Olsen, Chapman, Bassett, and a couple others gone from the A's. It was a fire sale. So just looking back at 2020, had the A's won the division like they did, but in a normal season, in a normal regular season, what did the playoffs bring? If they did this all over again, like if they restarted the season and played it all over again, if they simulated it, I think the A's would have had a much bigger and better fate than the way that 2020 played out. Now, all of that is on the field stuff. How about 2020 off the field for the Oakland A's? And to understand that, we need to reverse back to November 28th of 2018. That's when this team, I was there at headquarters at Jack London Square when they announced Howard Terminal and their exclusive intentions to build a baseball stadium there. But from late 2018 through most of 2019, there was really nothing tangible to speak of. I mean, the A's were obviously doing their research and having focus groups and exploring opportunities, but none of what they wanted to do was in front of Alameda County or the Oakland City Council. There was not an extreme push to get this project to become a reality in the ways that it needed to happen. And then 15 months later, after November of 2018, only 15 months later is when we hit March of 2020, and everything, including the pursuit of Howard Terminal, literally came to a halt. And so 2020 is kind of a lost year. The rest of 20, the first couple months of 2021, but as soon as things start to ramp up again, in early 2021, Las Vegas emerges as another option. In fact, there are parallel paths. That term first used by the A's in early 2021. And because maybe of a little bit of that pressure, all of a sudden now, July 20th of 2021, the Oakland City Council, for one of their scheduled meetings, has it on the agenda to vote on an A's term sheet. Now, they ended up passing and voting on their own term sheet, not the one that the A's presented. Again, just going back, at least though finally there was some tangible action taken, some steps forward officially to make the project more of a reality. Now, this is all before an EIR or before a BCDC land use vote. All those things turned out successful. They were later on. But at this point, that Oakland council meeting on July 20th of 2021 was really the first action taken. So if you kind of go back and summarize, and yeah, the lost year, the global pandemic of March of 2020 through, let's just say 2021 of March, but quite honestly, it continued later than that. But from November of 2018 to March of 20, Howard Terminal was the sole focus, but there were no tangible actions or developments for 15 months. So 15 months of really nothing official on the wheels moving. Then March of 20 to March of 21. Let's just cancel out those 12 months. Nothing happened there. March of 21 to April of 23. We had understood the entire time there were parallel paths with Las Vegas. That's 25 months of operating in two different markets trying to get things done simultaneously. And so that's another thing. For people who say that the A's went to Las Vegas and within 2 weeks or 2 months got things done. No, it was literally a span of 2 years there where they explored Howard Terminal and opportunities in Southern Nevada. 25 months, we get to April of 2023, which on the 19th of April, the A's said their sole focus was going to be on Las Vegas. And in the 2+ months since then, that has publicly remained true. So just to summarize here, 15 months of Howard Terminal is the only option, but no tangible actions. Then 12 months of everything essentially shutting down. Then 25 months of parallel paths, and now 2 months of sole focus on Las Vegas. When Commissioner Rob Manfred says that the A's spent 10 years trying to get Howard Terminal done, this looks like a different timeline to me. But again, all of that, and you wonder if 2020 didn't have such a shutdown effect or effect on the economy. How would things have played out different if the A's were actually productive in 2020 like they could have been instead of waiting until 2021 or 22? Would we be in this spot where relocation is a very real option and opportunity, and it jeopardizes the future of baseball in Oakland? 2020, again, derailed the A's on the field and off it. And I'm not saying that the year wasn't bad for everybody, because like I said, it was. But you also have to look back and say that 2020 was such a bad time for the A's in the way things played out. You made it here all the way to the end of the video. Thumbs up for that down below. I'd really appreciate it. Also, don't forget to subscribe to this channel so that I can see you next time.